You can count when you're happy. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can count when you're sad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or count when you're frightened. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Count when you're mad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Counting is wonderful. Counting is marvelous. Counting's terrific and how.
The episode opens with a guy trying to run Jonathan Kent off the road in his truck because he's in a hurry to get somewhere, and at first it seems ridiculous since they're the only people on the road, he's got plenty of room to pass, and he's got lots of dotted yellow lines. But we soon discover, as the convenient song selection in his car suggests, that he's gone a little nuts due to an illness he's contracted from the yellow flower that's sitting in his passenger seat. This flower is called the Nicodemus, kind of a knockoff of the flowers from the Star Trek episode This Side of Paradise, only instead of making people blissful and tranquil when it hits them with its spores, it takes away all their inhibitions, and also has the unfortunate side effect of putting them into high fevers, comas, and then death. Dr. Stephen Hamilton has been working with the various remarkable properties of the meteor rocks and somehow figures out that they can be used to bring certain extinct things back from the dead. Lex is furious, saying he's not paying Hamilton for pet projects, and he wants to know about the meteor's effects on people, not on plants. Hamilton states the obvious. Science is a process. You can't just start experimenting on people, you have to start with something simpler, safer, like an extinct plant that's said to have made a whole community go crazy and kill each other. I mean, sure, Lex already seems a little like his crazy Season 6 self here. He wants what he wants right now and screw those pesky laws of physics, but Dr. Jekyll here is completely out of his gourd. So Jonathan gets affected when he tries to help Mr. Beals out of his car and turns into a lazy, deadbeat dad, drinking like a sailor, treating Martha like a piece of meat, and then when the bank won't give him a loan, he goes down there with a shotgun like a crazy hick with a shotgun. His fever turns into a coma and he winds up in the hospital just like Beals. Then Chloe and Lana go to investigate the crash scene, and wouldn't you know it, Lana gets affected too. The first time helping out with one of these supernatural mysteries Clark, Chloe, and Pete have been investigating the whole year, and Lana gets a fatal illness the first day on the job. Gee, why am I not surprised? Then Lana lets loose, goes softcore as Chloe puts it, dumps Whitney, and goes after Clark, stripping down her underwear and diving into the swimming pool. Of course, it's only natural that Chloe would just happen to be taking a poll about people's greatest desires just before all this happens, and toward the beginning of the episode, Lana tells her her big secret desire is to climb up the big tall windmill in Chandler's Field, and just before she falls into her coma, that's just what she does. I love the look on Chloe's face when she says this, too. It's sad that the show clearly wants us to like Lana despite her shallow and dull personality. Even the people around her think she's lame. Once again, why Clark is so infatuated with her, I'll never know. And toward the end, Pete ends up with the disease too, after he and Chloe go snooping around Hamilton's lab, and his big giant character-revealing motivation comes to the forefront. He hates Lex. Oh wait, we knew that already. But we don't have any homicidal Kryptofreaks this week, so here comes Pete with a gun, a vendetta, and no inhibitions to round out the formula. I knew he was good for something, and Clark's good for something too, knocking people unconscious, which is how he diffuses the situation. He pretends to be on Pete's side so he can knock Lex out before Pete can kill him, and then he knocks Pete out too. Hamilton has conveniently run away so Clark won't know he and Lex were really working together, and Lex can brush that off as Pete's delusion. Oh, and who ultimately saves the day in the end? I mean, okay, Clark rescues Lex by smacking people in the face, sure, but there's all this build-up and drama about this disease that apparently has no cure. So the savior of the day is Dr. Hamilton, who, by the logic transcending the law of the 5-minute wrap-up, stumbles upon the antidote in a book in a museum at the last minute, and so all the main characters are saved just after a random guy nobody cares about is killed. Wow, this is a lot like an original series Star Trek episode. And in the final scene, Clark and Lana fulfill Lana's deep, dark desire to sit on top of a windmill, looking out at Metropolis and wondering how they're going to get down. Then credits. You can probably tell by now this isn't exactly my favorite episode, so before I get to individual good and bad points, let me just get this out there now. I have a particular disdain for this one because it started a formula that caught on throughout the rest of the series that I like to call the characters who aren't themselves episodes. In the vast majority of these, one or more main characters are affected by some plot device which makes them act out of character. If it's a female character, there's usually a lot of screen time spent on her being infatuated with and coming on to Clark. And if it's a male character, he usually tells someone he doesn't like just what he thinks of them in the most off-color way he can think of, and the person on the other end is very often Lex. If the person affected isn't Clark himself, that person usually sees Clark do something extraordinary, regardless of the sheer number of times before he or she was conveniently unconscious or, for some other contrived reason, avoids seeing his superpowers. And anything the writers want to have happen can and does, because, and with the exception of Red Kryptonite, it never fails, the affected characters never remember anything that happened the whole episode once they've been cured. This lets the writers do a couple things. A, tease the viewers with things they might like to see happen and stick, but they must know won't ultimately matter when the magic reset button is hit at the end. And B, give their actors a chance to stretch their acting muscles by doing something they don't get to do all the time. Most supernatural dramas do episodes like this from time to time, but as far as I've seen, none of the others have ever been as contrived as Smallville or happened as often as Smallville. I get actors wanting to do new things. They're on set for long days of shooting, and it's more fun for them to mix it up a bit. But it's possible to do out-of-character shows that aren't completely throwaway stories and that don't have such a hackneyed and lazy premise. And while some of these are better than others, part of my problem is that Smallville has so many of them. It feels like the producers and writers aren't excited enough about the characters the way they are to just give them interesting and long-lasting things to do, so they just say, what do viewers want to see that we can't deliver for real at this point in time, and then they write episodes around the scenes they want to see happen, where the status quo can just be reset at the end. I wanted to express my irritation about this formula now, so you'll understand why I hate it so much when we come to more episodes that use it in the future. The best thing in this episode is the performance by John Snyder. His interpretation of what Jonathan Kent would be like without his values and self-control is truly awful and terrifying to watch, especially if you put yourself in Clark's shoes. Clark and Jonathan had a wonderful father-son chemistry the whole season, and it's sad to watch Clark see his dad like this. It's the one of the three out-of-character scenarios here that really gets me thinking about the dark nature of people. Both Lana and Pete come off as obvious and uninspired to me, but so far in the series, I've come to really like Jonathan Kent, and it's disturbing to think there's a part of him that feels like the whole town has screwed him over, and all his hard work has been for nothing. It doesn't make me like him less, though. The Nicodemus flower takes away all of a person's inhibitions, and the idea is that if you take away a man's upbringing and the values he's made a core part of himself, he's going to revert to his base instincts and gut reactions. I imagine Clark would appreciate what he has with his parents a lot more after seeing what his father could have been if not for all his self-discipline. I think it would have been a much stronger episode if the focus was on Jonathan through more of the episode, and if the situation was used to further explore why the Kents are such a solid family unit by taking away the very things that make them that way. And then, of course, allow Jonathan to remember it all so that he can have some sort of a character arc. Perhaps it bothers him that there's any part of him at all that's bitter about the life he's chosen, and he finds a better appreciation for what he has. This episode does propel the subplot of Lex working on the meteor rocks behind Clark's back. I said a couple episodes back that Lex is good at telling half-truths, and I like it more when he finds ways to do that rather than bold-faced lying to Clark because he's a master manipulator. But now he's beginning to get into territory where he has to just straight-up lie. Still, though, he really tries here to admit the truth more often than just making stuff up. I like that Clark gets rough with him when he thinks Lex might be involved with what put Jonathan in a coma after he discovers that Lex checked out a book about the Nicodemus flower from the library. Lex says he remembered the story and he's grasping at straws, and that Clark is overreacting. All he did was check out a book from a library. That's a plausible story, and there's some truth in it. He is looking for a cure, and he does genuinely want to see these people get better, but he's also partially responsible for what happened, and he says that it's not his fault. At the end, Clark asks if Hamilton was really at the mansion like Pete claims, and Lex says, "What do you think?" That's smooth. This is the first big meteor-involved experiment Lex has funded in his quest to figure out Clark's secret that has hurt people Clark cares about, and that makes this episode a lot more significant than it might have been. As I said earlier, these episodes usually feel like they're developed around a single scenario the writers want to see happen on screen. And so rather than really telling a story, we get a plot device to get us into that scenario and another one to get us out. This time, that scenario is Lana coming on to Clark so that the audience can be teased about a romance that obviously isn't going to start blooming yet, and certainly not while Lana's under the influence of a disease that we already know might be fatal. I think this one's a fan favorite for a lot of people, but I'm sorry, the pool scene just doesn't do anything for me. me. There's a really uneven tone in this episode. The writers recognize that in order to care what happens to these characters, the stakes must be high, so they make it a disease that will kill them without an antidote. But where that logic breaks down is in the very notion that Clark might take advantage of this situation, knowing that Lana is severely ill. We know from Shimmer that Clark has made up his mind not to take advantage of the unstable Whitney situation since his father's been sick, and that's even mentioned here when Clark says that since then it's been a, quote, no-fly zone with Lana. So why would we, even for a second, think Clark would be reprehensible enough to take advantage of someone with a sudden personality disorder who's obviously only coming on to him because she's lost her inhibitions? It says nothing about his character because that's information we already have. The fact that Lana knows he's into her also isn't news. She'd have to be even more unobservant than I already think she is not to have noticed that by now. So all of this is really pointless. It's just eye candy, which is funny since most of those shots are of a body double and not Kristen Couric herself. And I think it says a lot about how lost the writers already were with this character when uninhibited Lana calls herself an insecure little girl and says she's tired of her and all her talk about her dead parents. With nothing holding her back, even Lana knows how pathetic she is. Wow! And still, Nega Lana is about what I would have expected, acting superficial and acting all seductive to get what she wants. It's hard to tell if we're supposed to think she has real feelings for Clark or if she just wants sex right now, especially considering how she comes on to Lex. And after half a season of never giving Pete anything interesting to do, he gets to act out a character. Oh, that's really interesting. I'm not sure who he really is in the first place. It's kind of cool that he addresses that, though, when he says to Chloe, sure, ignore Pete, he's just the funny guy. Although, if Pete was supposed to be the comic relief for this show, I sure never noticed. And I really don't like the gangster angle they go with when he makes Chloe give him the car keys. Personally, I think that's venturing into racial stereotyping territory. And questions to ask Jarrell when I get to heaven. Just one this week. If the Nicodemus flower takes away all inhibition, why doesn't Lana take it all the way with Clark in the swimming pool? Now, I know the real answer to this. This is a primetime network show. But I'm going to tackle it anyway. If Pete and Jonathan, who would certainly never kill anyone with their faculties about them, are about to pick up a gun and try to commit murder, it's hard to buy that Lana would have enough self-control to keep all her clothes on when she's trying to seduce Clark. Oh, sure, if there was a gun there and she didn't like what he had to say, maybe she'd shoot him, but Nega Lana draws the line at full frontal nudity. Anyway, and now let's jump over to the scoreboard. We don't really have any human Kryptofreaks this week, but I'm going to count the Nicodemus flower as this week's Kryptofreak, as it's the thing that's affected by kryptonite, and it kind of has a superpower in that it gets to come back to life. I'm not going to count the characters who get affected by it as Kryptofreaks, as they're affected by a flower and not by kryptonite itself. We have one car crash this week, and it's the guy with the Nicodemus flower in the teaser who crashes into Jonathan, Mr. Beals. We have 4 characters this week who aren't themselves. Mr. Beals, Jonathan, Lana, and Pete. We've got one instance of Clark in bullet time when Jonathan shoots him with a shotgun, and we've got 3 instances of convenient unconsciousness. First, Lex, when Clark knocks him out so he can grab Pete's gun at super speed, Pete because he's violent, and Lana when she goes into a coma right after Clark catches her. Maybe that's a convenient coma. Hey, that's a first. And we've got 3 memory wipes. Lana, Pete, and Jonathan. Mr. Beals died before he could forget anything, so I guess he went to his grave with the knowledge of blowing his own car up because he was too delusional to notice when the yellow lines are dotted. I'm going to give Nicodemus a 1.5 out of 4, which I know is going to seem really low for a lot of people, but there's just not enough of a real story here and too much teasing the viewers about Clark and Lana for my taste. But Jonathan and Lex save it from being a complete waste. Was there any item I missed in any category? Leave me a personal message on Geekvolution, and I'll be sure to add it to the count. I'm Captain Logan, and consider this episode counted.